Call the meeting to order, first planning board meeting of the year 2020. Welcoming new and returning board members. I'll start with Frank McElwain, our brandy new board member. Welcome. Glad to have you on board.
Thank you, Bob.
And Amanda General joined us, what, 3 months ago?
November.
At best, yeah, 2 months ago. And has decided after a meeting that she'll stay.
Yep. I'm back.
So, and Christine's back for a term. She filled out a term, and now she's re-signed up
She re-upped.
for a
Good
full
thing,
term.
too.
Thank you. Good.
And Frank won't be the new guy on the block long because David Corvo signed up
Oh, good.
to come and work on the hardest working board in the city.
So when are you getting sworn in?
Monday.
After,
They'll have to scrutinize the application, but I trust that they'll make the right decision.
I don't know, Corvo. Well, we'll be glad to have you on this side of the table. That'd be great. The more the merrier. Of course, Dan, you've been around for a while. You're welcome back too.
Thank you.
We now come to the election of officers for this year. I will start off by nominating Christine for secretary.
I'll second that.
Any further nominations for secretary?
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. I volunteered actually prior to.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we'll vote on, well, let's see if we can get a slate and then guess one vote for the slate. I talked with Dan last week about whether he would like to be vice chairman this year, and he agreed with me to do that. So I would like to nominate Dan for vice chair.
Second that.
And I would like, this is kind of silly, self-serving, but I would like to finish up my term as chair. And I'll need a nomination from the floor to do that.
I nominate you as chair.
And I'll second that.
Appreciate that. Do we need any further discussion of these candidates? Hearing none, I'll call the slate to a vote. All those in favor? Signify. It's unanimous. Thank you, we've done that. The next thing we must do is set meeting dates and times for 2020. It's a formality. I see no reason to change what we're doing, which is the second Thursday of every month at 5:30. Anyone want to vote for something else? Then that's what it'll be. No change.
Is that something we have to vote on?
Oh, I suppose.
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know either. That's why I asked.
It's not a big issue. We might as well take a vote on it. All in favor? That takes care of it. Now Denise can record that it was unanimous and everybody will be happy. The next item is minutes. Go ahead. You had something to say?
No, I just took a breath.
Minutes from December 12th. Hopefully you all had a chance to review these because they should have come to you by email. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. May we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved, is there a second?
Second?
All in favor? Here we are. We have findings of fact for the R.H. Foster project on Bennett Drive, which we must review and hopefully approve. It comes right after the minutes.
So we went through the site design review at the last meeting, for anyone that wasn't here. Our R.H. Foster, longstanding business on Bennett Drive, is actually gonna build a new building. They're gonna tear down the old one and build us a brand new, on the run, I guess they call them on the run.
Freshies.
Freshies.
Oh, Freshies now.
Yeah. And brand new modern building, brand new gas island. They're gonna make improvements to the travel patterns in and off the property. They're gonna put a fence along the line between them and Tim Hortons to keep people from running in front of the exit people. Nice project. So as you read down through the findings of facts, really, they did a really good job on their design and their presentation. I think they hit all the high points from A to Z. And the only really qualifiers we put on that was to make sure the fence was gonna be there. And make sure that they didn't have floodlights pointing right straight up in the air.
So, let me make a comment on the conclusions of law section, our training that we had a couple weeks ago. You remember during the training, they had a section on that, and they stressed the importance of being very, very complete in stepping through each item and a rather elaborate explanation of whether you met it and have an explanation for each one. I'm not sure that this is sufficient for the purposes of what we're doing. It's something to check into.
We had several models.
Yeah.
When I stepped in this position, a certain CEO did it this way, and a certain planning board secretary did it this way, and so I kind of cobbled them together and came up with this one. We can certainly do more chapter and verse if you'd like.
Yeah, the issue is, for the future, if anybody were to contest it or to somehow, bring up any objections after the fact, you have really nothing, no meat there to defend the decision, so.
Well, if this in any way refers to the application and the information in the application, which includes our checklist, which we did go through uninvited and complete.
From A to Z.
Yeah.
Yeah, we stepped through each one of them, but that conclusions of law section in this decision is typically much more extensive.
Well, till we can hire a lawyer, that ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
But does this refer to that other document? Okay, that's what I'm looking for.
Something to check into. I just raise it as a potential.
I believe it said just that, for findings from A to Z.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it, yep. Site design review criteria. Okay, well, it also says people have 45 days to appeal, so, let's see.
And I also would want to bring up, the planning board secretary as a signatory, should not be the chair of the planning board? Is there something in our ordinances that give that authority to the secretary of the planning board?
I would have to look it up, but we've always done the secretary sign on,
Something else to check.
of all the models I've looked at, it was always signed by secretary, but we can look at,
Okay.
see if it addresses that in the charter.
Notice of decision, yeah, public communications are signed by, that's what this is. Public communication, my signature is on the application.
Okay.
Ken can research it and find it, I suppose. But we'll have Christine sign this one, if we have a motion to approve.
And I can provide you examples of that, the materials from the little training thing that we had, just to give you an
Sure.
idea what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And we can.
If you could scan that,
do-
send it
Yeah,
along.
do whatever we need to do here that you're comfortable with.
I might have that with me tonight, so we can.
Oh, actually, I do have
can-
that with me
Yeah,
as well. in the
we can
truck.
dig into it at the end and
Okay.
give it to him.
Yeah, we've got plenty of time tonight to review, to look at that if you want to. But let's deal with this one right now. Can we have a motion to approve this notice of decision?
I move to approve.
Here, a second?
I second that.
Okay. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. What's today, tonight? Okay. Mr. CEO, new business, any?
We did not have any news business since the last meeting. and/or new communications
Okay.
that I can't handle in the staff report. I did include the permits and activity from our housing officials. Good busy year, I believe, 2019.
That's a lot of building permits.
I had no idea.
So a lot of garage projects, a lot of renovations, pretty good year for building. Lots of plumbing permits.
How does that building permits compare to other years, Ken, do you know?
I didn't go back and compare them. I reached out to Tony Michaud and asked for a number, but I will see if I can compare that for 2018. That would be interesting.
I noticed on the building fee, I mean, the fees, most of them were 50, like when it was set, what, about a year or so ago, just a flat fee, and a couple of them were like 100. Are all of those
So, yeah,
fines, double fine fee?
Yeah.
You had it noted, or it's noted in the one note, but not the others.
yeah, typically if you see a $100 fee,
Okay.
they started work before they had a permit.
There's also, I had another question on,
There are a few of those under signs as well, I believe.
what else? I think I know how the plumbing fee works. It's all tied to the number of fixtures and everything, right?
Right.
Okay.
And that's done by our local plumbing inspector, so that's contracted out.
I don't know, I had another question as I went through these, but now I can't remember what it was.
Notices and violations.
So notices and violations, I can do a comparison. Last year I did 72 notices of a violation. This year I show 65, but I actually was working on those other 7 missing ones as well. Sometimes it takes a while to clear these up and get people voluntarily compliant. What happens a lot of time on a third notice is we attach that notice to a policeman, and that gets people's attention fairly quick. And final payments for the 2019 Small Communities Grant. Out of 6 applications that were accepted last year, we only had 1 project in the end. We had concern from one landowner that there was too much government overreach in the program, so he pulled out. And another felt that he didn't want to have to take a loan out to do his portion of the project this past year. He had other stuff he needed to take care of, so the one we did do was a 100% grant. So a full single-family dwelling septic field was completed. Dick St. Peter did the work. He was late getting his invoice in, so he was late getting paid, and so we just completed that last week. So we'll be looking for the announcement this year. Last year it was sprung upon us, and actually the county of Aroostook announced this Small Communities Grant. The announcement didn't come across my desk until I reached out to find it, and then we jumped into the process kind of cold, never having done one. We had 8 interested landowners. 6 went into the second phase. 3 were approved. 1 was completed. So we'll see if we can do better this year. And I actually added that as another goal.
Is there anything that we could do or can do to alleviate some of that burden of paperwork and that? Or is it necessarily something that the landowner just has to do himself? Or is there some
Well,
way that we can provide assistance in that?
A lot of the paperwork and organization is done here in the office.
It would be anyway, yeah.
Yeah, you really got to do a lot of hand-holding. A lot of these failed septic systems, folks are maybe aging in place, not really sophisticated with a computer or anything like that, so you really you guide them through it. And like I said, this was my first experience with this particular program.
Mhm.
And if you got a problem, they get a form for it. You can fill it out the same way with a CDBG program.
I can only imagine.
So is it 100% funded?
They can be. This, the one project that we did complete was 100%. The other two were actually commercial endeavors. One was a Airbnb along the Aroostook River. So that project would have only been, I believe, 30%. 30% state and the rest on the landowner. And then
Because it was commercial or because of?
it was a commercial entity. So the state is investing in this private sector business. So the other one was a more of a two-family type residence, so the rental units in there, also considered a business. And that would have been a little better than 30%. But still, you're talking, these projects where you had some fairly significant failures, they were $20,000 projects. So if you're getting a 30% discount on getting the work done, this is still, they left a lot of money on the table.
Yeah.
So that was unfortunate. I would imagine we'll need to pick these same people up this year because we know now that there's failed septic systems. We can't unsee that. So we either start writing notices of violation or we try to sign them up for some assistance. Or both.
Well, you might get their attention one way and then.
Right, right. And that's probably what'll happen.
And it's specifically for septic systems.
This program, the Small Communities Grant that we're working with, it was specifically for septic systems that were impacting groundwater. So in the case of the B&B along the Aroostook River, literally 150 feet,
Yeah.
you know, pretty close to the railroad tracks in the river. The second one was a short distance from the Presteel Stream, actually right past a daycare center, so it was kind of like the poster child to get this thing fixed. And unfortunately, we didn't get to work there either. So the one we did fix would have been a drainage that would go to the Caribou Stream. So good project all around. Other ones that we did, we looked at 8. There was one on the Emond Road which didn't leave the property, so we couldn't prove that it was impacting any other source of water. A 100-year-old septic system. So basically just kind of a pit situation.
Just a pit in the stone case around it, yeah.
So unfortunately, we weren't able to help that family. Interesting project, though, and we'll look to see if we can participate in that again this year.
How do people find out about this grant?
Well, last year the county got a notice right off quick, and they went right on TV with it. And the following day, we started getting phone calls. So this year, if we do get a notice, we will post it on our website, and we'll post it on the scroll at the wellness center, and we'll put it in the newspaper. We'll get the word out.
You had mentioned contacting the people that you knew were in violation.
Well, like I said, this year, now I know I've got 2 systems that are in violation. So two failing systems, and we can't ignore that.
Are you aware of others, residents that are in violation,
Well, the one on the Emond Road is a septic system,
but that doesn't qualify?
but it's kind of like a non-conforming, existing non-conformance.
Right.
So it doesn't, we couldn't prove that it leaves his property. His concern that eventually his well will be impacted, his own private well. It was a dairy operation, I guess, in the day. He's pretty much retired now. It's interesting, and I think it's worthy to get these sources corrected so they're not dumping sewage into our waterways. So
So How much funds are provided or have been provided?
Statewide, there was a lot of money in that program. I wanted to say there was $3 million available.
So it's not a set amount for Caribou
No,
necessarily?
statewide, and it's highly competitive.
Yeah.
Grant applications.
I think Fort Kent actually did 9. I think the county did several. So we were well represented here in the county. I haven't talked to anybody else about it. So we'll be looking for that in 2020. I wanted to mention planning board training because last year I had an offer from NMDC. Jay Cam said he does training. He could come right to us and we could have a training situation right here in this room. Or we could go to him and use their electronic media in their boardroom and do training there. So if anyone's interested, and then I'll get more information and
Bring
broadcast it out.
a synopsis or a summary of the topics you might want to cover, and so we can. maybe
So
pick and
probably
choose.
similar to the training that Dan and Christine went, so that kind of like a one-on-one type situation for elected officials. We can start there, and then if we want to get specific about things, whether it's CDBG grants or we're going to be looking heavily at light. We'll talk about that in a minute. So Jay's very knowledgeable, and he's the senior planner at NMDC. He's been doing this for a long time. So that being said, training doesn't come this way very often. We were able to do it in Caribou this year. I would have been there. I had another meeting that night. I did take it when I was a counselor, so it's good, and I gather you took a lot away from it.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Who did your training, Dan?
The MMA, Maine
Yep.
Municipal Association, sponsored it down in Augusta, and they video conference stuff here to NMDC. And the two ladies that they had were both lawyers doing the presenting, and they were top notch. I mean, they had the answers to everything, and so it was good.
Well, I'd be interested in any
Okay.
training.
Yeah.
They always
Yeah.
hold
I would
the
be too.
training for newly elected and appointed officials, so that'll be coming soon.
Okay.
We'll blast it out to everybody. So the big conversation tonight, Mr. Chair, is planning board goals.
Yeah,
So we're working with the city council. They've placed some fairly ambitious goals ahead of us, and I think that the planning board will play a big part in some of these. Certainly, the Blight and Economic Development Initiative, Blight survey that was in your package.
I think that blight report belongs perhaps in some reform, at least their goals, and their action plan. I think that belongs in the comprehensive plan.
Exactly. In the comprehensive plan, I actually put it as goal 1, the comprehensive plan. You also see chapter 13, which is an ongoing effort here. It's been years in the making. That was mentioned specifically at council in the workshop session last week. And when you look at them, they're all intertwined. So we're going to have to pull them together all at the same time. So those are ambitious goals. So, and that's good. I think it'll give us something to sink our teeth into. So for the blight initiative itself, we're going to be looking at a blight survey, which will go hand in hand with our land use survey and our proposed land use and zoning maps for the comprehensive plan. Also chapter 13, so that's a good for instance. We'll be looking forward to maybe doing CDBG grant, perhaps for blight, as a goal. More small communities grant work, ideally. And anything else that this board would like to see tackled?
Well, I'd be happy if we could pull off those three. Especially the second one. It's been a long time coming.
There is some heavy lifting there, but the chapter 13 made it to the manager's review. We realize that, you know, yeah, we have, to, you know, our new land use and zoning maps are not complete yet. So certainly all that work of, what, 7 years?
Something like that, man.
Hasn't gone to waste, but we're just not quite there yet. And a lot of that work will go directly to the comprehensive plan. We'll bringing a new zoning map to the city council and be using that as our guide into the future. And the Blighton Economic Development Initiative, well, that's still being figured out. That'll be fleshed out
Yeah,
on
that's-
Monday. Brand new committee. I believe I will be tasked, and Penny Thompson will be tasked with sitting on that committee, or commission, I should say. I initially thought we'd be just kind of staffing it, but I guess it's going to be a commission, and we're going to be appointed as well, as well as the manager.
Is it going to be a Blight/Economic Development Commission,
That's
or just a Blight Commission?
That's how the mayor has defined it, in how the correcting this blight is in fact economic development. So we're putting value back in the land.
Have you seen the, oh, it's here. Oh, we need to read that.
Okay. Even more, I thought the committee's report on blight was very interesting.
Yes.
Even more interesting were the supporting documents referenced in the back. So not only did they reference a quick five-step plan to start your blight effort in your community from the Pennsylvania document, but as you read further, they reference a land bank situation. So if the city needs to secure these properties, whether it's through eminent domain or tax acquired property or whatever, we could then place these properties into this land bank. Could be a nonprofit organization. It could be, I guess it could be a housing authority type situation. The idea is to put value back in these buildings and then place qualified families in these buildings. Train them, educate people how on ownership, and then it'll be back on the tax rolls. So economic development. All that needs to be fleshed out. And certainly the first 5 steps, this report goes a long ways to filling a lot of that, all the way to the latter parts of step 3. So we can really hit the ground running in step 4, step 5. At the same time, be thinking of this concept of the land bank, which could entail ordinance work, both improved ordinances and new ordinances. So I think the time frame given to us originally was April. If we have to create new ordinances for our charter, for our code book, we might be able to get a vote, but even so, it takes 90 days for that to become our law. So that puts us in the midsummer. But certainly,
It's gonna be a lot longer if you're gonna propose anything like a land bank,
It-
where you're licensing rental owners, that's
the
gonna be.
legal issues you got to take up. You got to
That
figure.
is, that's gonna be,
And
a
the
year or two.
the
if we ever get it through.
the sample that was shown from Sanford, which I thought, which offered that 5-step plan with the ordinance work, both new and existing, they also aggressively funded it to the tune of $250,000. So to be able to take these properties and add value to them and then roll the money back over into more projects. So you're continually cleaning up the blight. But it was key, if you read down through there, that it was
Gotta be some secret.
aggressively financed. So it's all really interesting. It's all being done right now. So we're not late to the game. We'll have to keep our eye on the ball because they want to move it along fast. This new Blight Commission is slated to meet 4 times. There'll be another report. I should think the beginnings of the land bank will come from there. And then
So do you
I'm
sense that the
thinking
council
the rest will
is,
settle on us.
Yeah, do you think the council is set on this land bank concept, or are they just charging us to go out and look at it as one option?
The conversations that staff have been allowed to sit through suggested that the council would really rather not be landowners. They don't really want to be into real estate. And so it becomes very attractive to put that activity on another entity, even to the point of financing it. So there are discretionary funds at the council's disposal that they could invest in this. It could be that other entities in town would like to take on this. Maybe the Caribou Economic Growth Council, maybe the Business Investment Group.
But
It would take a nonprofit to pull it off.
It's gonna be it's got to be a non-government organization, is what you're saying.
I would think, and I don't want to speak out of turn, I would think it'd have to be a nonprofit organization. But in the past, for instance, our housing authority here in the city is Section 8 vouchers. We don't own property.
No.
And so in the past, the private sector had taken up the housing issue, whether it was elderly housing or low and moderate income housing, was done through private sector. And they went out to seek money from USDA or the Farmers Home Administration back in the day, and Maine Housing Authority, and created those entities. It could be that one of those entities could take on a project
I
like
think
this.
that was the example that was given in like the Pennsylvania example. It was government, but it was outside the budget, the city budget.
So your housing authorities, for instance, in
Separate
Fort
from the
Fairfield,
general budget.
in Presque Isle, are quasi-municipal. So it's kind of like CUD, or I guess the landfill, in that they're removed from the government, but they're closely associated with the government.
But they have their own budget and their own funding sources.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, after those four meetings of the commission, it looks to me like the heavy lifting is going to be left to staff and the planning board.
Well, should we have planning board representation on this commission?
I think they would be agreeable if you wanted to throw your name in there. You want me to do that? Anyone interested?
I think it's absolutely necessary. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a decision that we may all disagree with or whatever. We'd like to be involved in the discussion and be able to influence
At the very least, we should have someone designated as a liaison.
as a liaison. Yeah.
Okay.
Please. And I'll be happy to do that on behalf of the planning board if that's acceptable to
Accept
everybody.
your offer.
Okay. You say there are gonna be 4 meetings in the next 3 months or something like that?
I would think if they're going to meet 4 times, it'd most likely be a 4-month.
Okay.
I think that by saying April, they're saying that, yes, this is urgent, and we don't want to move it right along, but April's not far away.
No, what will come in April is another set of, here's what we have to do next, paragraphs.
Correct. So that's really all I brought to the board this evening.
Well, it's a good start for January.
Well, and I hear there's more interest, so we might fill our final seat and have a full board
That'd be
before the
great.
season's out. So
Nice.
that would be a good thing. It's been a while since we've had a full board.
Anyone else have anything to add on any subject?
Back to the planning board goals, was there any focus on, we've talked about this riverfront development concept for years now?
Still my dream, and I've been tinkering around with, this time of year, for instance, we take a look at tax acquired properties. The tax acquired properties this year along the riverfront in the downtown area is really interesting because we tax acquired what is now known as Merlin One, or the old power plant. So we don't want any part of that. They want to sell that and be, that's an albatross.
Commercial power plants that?
Both the steam plant and the diesel plant.
No kidding.
Yeah.
They walked away?
So it's tax acquired, well, the principal passed away. It was handed to his family. His family did the best they could to.
I thought the
Operation.
dam turbine was still in production.
The dam itself belongs to Algonquin Power.
Yeah,
Yep, still does.
what they didn't know,
There's some relay equipment that Emera has. They're currently moving. They'll move it to a property they own along that same area with the transformers and all that, switching equipment. Just down, I guess just north of the dam itself, on both sides of the river, there are 2 undeveloped lots. Well, it's been my recommendation that the city retain those lots and not sell them. That gives us access to the river on both sides. Further downstream, almost to where Anderson's junkyard used to be, and we talk about where things used to be. Okay, so just north of Ames Recycling now, probably 4 properties. There's another tax acquired property that gives us access to the river at that point. So now what we have is bookends. And the rest in between, the siding itself is owned by the state of Maine, Department of Transportation. The locomotive garage is owned by Terrio's Tire, but they would sell that. They might even be convinced to give it over. They no longer use the building. The old turnstile is still there. The locomotive garage is still there. Would be a really great event center if it could be fixed out. The roof's in bad shape. Part of the outbuildings, masonry is in bad shape, but it's railroad. It was built to last 100 years. It's now 150, right? So the concept of riverfront development hasn't gone away in my mind, and everybody that has any kind of goal setting in the community, any work session we sat in, it comes up almost immediately every time. We're going to do something at the river. So how do we get traction? So other activity along that same area, the Atlantic Salmon Federation would love to do salmon stocking there, and they would put a facility on the site. They already own the land. The land was given to them. So there's several lots right down to the old Federation starch plant. That's all Atlantic Salmon Federation property now. And they would like to do a fish hatchery there.
that's interesting.
That's pretty interesting when you consider we've got the bookends and it's all in the same neighborhood. So what happens next is our boat landing just past the bridge. The old Kobe Starch building, which again is for sale and could be had cheap. All our trails cross through there, ATV trails cross through there. The idea of having some sort of marina, kayaks, canoes, whatever have you.
A lot could be done there.
I think I have a copy of the old Trails report. In that Trails report references the riverfront development, but it was highly stylized and featured cafes and marinas and you know, nice shops and things like
Yeah.
that. So first we need to acquire the land from the Department of Transportation. Unfortunately, the Department of Transportation owns the railroad tracks all the way out to Loring Air Force Base, I think. And it passes right through that siding. So that might be a hiccup as we try to acquire. I do know that rail line is non-operable. It's got trees growing up through it. There are sections of rail that are in the air, nearly 30 feet where they've been washed into the river. So to me, why not give us all that? and we could have a trail system better than any around, we'd already do, but right along the river. Parts of that area I'm talking about command views in two directions. It's a beautiful spot. 2 minutes from downtown, you're seeing bald eagles and blue herons. So, I'll get off my box. That's an exciting
I think it's
subject
gonna
for me.
take some initiative from somebody who's passionate about it.
Yeah.
To go to council and say, let's set up a commission specifically to focus on this and let's get this off the ground.
Some other things happening around town is the Sitel building was actually offered to the city. They were negotiating, they're still negotiating in that they had done a TIF agreement with the city. So there's value to that agreement out to 30 years. I think that they would like to be out of that building, they would give it up and with some compensation. But I think negotiations are kind of stalled. We also have the VMS building. I think the Caribou Economic Growth Council has that property.
What building is that?
That would be the old Brooks building where C.B. Smith was, VMS.
You've named
Across from the
Brooks,
Powers,
Smith, and VMS, none of which.
same
ring a bell
building.
with me.
It's right across from the old Powers movie theater, right across the street. So directly across from the post office,
Side printing.
right next to Quick Print. Yeah.
Oh, that little one, okay, all right.
Yeah, doesn't have much signage or anything, so.
So there's talk of Kerry would love to pull back all their business to the campus at some point. That would leave a big hole in our downtown now because their administrative work is being done in the St. Peter building downtown by the Bank North. That brings a lot of foot traffic downtown. And we've had some communications with the owner of that building. They would like to do residential application on the second floor, which is acceptable in code,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some challenges there. Winter parking, fire marshal issues. So they're working their way through that. They're doing the engineering on that right now. That could be interesting. They're thinking upscale apartments. So those people that want to live in the downtown area and don't necessarily want to drive around, walking distance to everywhere.
Is it utilized now? The upstairs?
Office.
It was all office space, but it hasn't been rented in years. And when, was it ACAP that was down there or AMHC?
AMHC, I think, was there.
Moved out. So now it's all vacant. So I think that, who was over there? I think Jepson was over there with his financials. He's
Yes.
moved over to the other building. Yeah. So there's lots of things happening. The build out for Haney's condominium idea on Glen Street is happening right now. So the third unit is being put together.
Yep.
I've seen that they've run the sewer line, and now I can envision where that fourth unit's gonna be. Of course, the school's happening.
Yeah, they
This
should
morning on the
start
way to work
on
was the
the energy
first time I
plan.
got stuck behind the line turning to Dunkin' Donuts, so they're getting more busy.
Well, I'm glad about that. After they had opened it, it seemed like it was for several days. You never saw anybody in there. I thought, oh no.
Every time I go to Cribbers, somebody says, "Have you been in there yet?" And I keep saying, "No, not yet."
No, I haven't been in there either.
So for people that are leaning towards the negative side of Kira, there are good things happening. There's talk of a new deli in the old Sherman Williams spot on Dan Cassidy's property, so the Skyway Mall, right next to Bar and Grill.
Yeah, and there's also Farms Bakery, which is a
Also
quasi
Farm-
deli there anyway.
Also Farms Bakery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of eateries in town now. I've heard rumors of other people moving around in the community and improving their businesses, but I'm sworn to secrecy. I'm not supposed to know that much. So unfortunately, it looks like we might lose Beauregard to Presque Isle. It seems so they were offered the Northeast Publishing Building. It was an officer an offer they really couldn't refuse.
So
I think they'll be moving.
that's another name.
Beauregard used to be,
Equipment
Crown
maintenance
Crown
parts.
Equipment.
Oh, okay.
Blanger's, it was Blanger's what?
You're going too far back.
I'm way back now, yeah.
They used to be
Showing my
somebody
age
else,
now.
right?
Yeah, well, it was Crown, now it's,
Crown.
I guess Beauregard.
Grass
bought it.
land.
Beauregard. They have
Yeah,
a location
so,
down in Bangor, too.
I guess that's imminent. They were made an offer that we just can't, there's nothing in Caribou that matches that facility.
Plus,
And
they've
we're giving
got-
it to them for a steal.
Plus, they've got a lot of, that Northeast Publishing building, there's a lot of space around it too.
It's got big overhead doors and high
And
ceilings.
it's got rail access,
Rail access, yeah.
right close.
Lots of property, so that'll be a tough one. And I hear that Webb might leave, so the plumbing outfit.
Hmm.
So that's all rumored. So there's good and bad. I think you can say about that in any community. We talked the other night, we've talked at the Business Investment Group about 25 businesses that might retire and cease operations in Caribou over time. But you know, that kind of evolution happens in every town.
It goes on.
You know, people grow old and they retire. We'd like to be able to help them with succession plans for these businesses, but many times these businesses run only because they have no overhead. Their building's paid. They have a set clientele and a niche market, and try to set someone up with the overhead costs of buying that business.
If I'm not
Might never
mistaken,
work
the
the same way.
Mahoney building is up for sale, but it's being marketed as a residence, not as an office building.
And the house right next to it, I guess it was Dr. Donahue's place, that's sold as a residence as well. So historically, they've
I got no
always
objection
been.
to residences on High Street, I think that's probably a good idea.
Well, it's technically a commercial zone, but those uses have always been there as
Yeah.
residences. So the RSU's moving along with the school project, gangbusters. They're pouring concrete for the heat plant. Acquired the old apartment house next to the middle school, to be used for excess area for snow plowing and parking. I've noticed that people have started taking bits and pieces of it away already. The door and the handicap ramp were borrowed or taken or allowed to be taken. But we're going to actually be in there and do a pre-demolition inspection just after they take ownership on the 16th.
Good.
So that'll happen quickly, I think. I don't know, Frank knows more about that than
You've got a good connection too.
I do. Yeah, well, I'm not supposed to know a lot of that.
Yeah,
I gotta be
we're not supposed
careful.
to know a lot of things.
So that's exciting, the new park. And
The dog park?
I'm really excited about the new park because that's gonna be excellent.
You mean the dog park?
No, the new Teague Park.
Oh, the new teak park, oh, that's gonna be fabulous when it gets
That's
to
gonna
finish
be
that.
excellent, and looking forward, because, well, Bob and I worked on a project that we got done with, but we gave a lot of money to the new splash pad,
Sure
should
did.
that happen. I'm saying a lot of people look back fondly on the old park and everything that happened there, and it had a great history, but I think this new park will as well. It's gonna be a nice facility.
Yeah, that splash pad's gonna be an attraction.
Yes, it is.
Well, the one in Presque Isle
Yes, it
draws
is.
people all the way from
Yeah.
Fort
Yes,
Campbell.
it does.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
by the busload, so.
Yeah. I was there one day, and Easton Parks and Rec took a bus over there with all their kids during the summer program. So, yeah.
It's actually kind of fun to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw my first one years ago down on the waterfront in Boston. Wow, what a neat thing. It's in Columbus Park. in the north
So
end.
kids won't be getting swimming lessons like we used to in the old days, but
Yeah, but they'll be able to, wherever kids gather and get wet, they have a good time, and then they want lunch.
and they bring their parents along, that's right.
That's right.
So that's good.
Okay, I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
coming. Frank, again, welcome.